Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure getting back on another episode of Punika News. And today we have with us Lt Gen Shokin Chauhan, PVSM, AVSM, YSM, SM, VSM, a very distinguished officer who commanded a corps, was the Premier Strike Corps of India, was the chairman of the Ceasefire Monitoring Committee, and now is a very prolific writer and on strategic affairs. Sir, it's a pleasure having you with us to discuss something which is so relevant. More so
Thank
since we are celebrating, if you can call celebrating the right term, we are rather commemorating the anniversary of one of the most momentous events of this century, the Russia Ukraine war. So, sir,
Good morning,
let's.
Ajay. Yeah, good morning,
Such a
Ajay. Great
pleasure
to be with
having you,
you.
sir.
Great to
Sir,
be with you on the show. Uh, yes, I'm looking forward to this discussion. We have over the last year or so done a number of discussions on the Ukraine war, starting from the time when it started to 1 year later. We never thought Ukraine would survive this long,
true.
but I read your book. It's such an interesting book,
Thanks.
and I read your article too,
Thanks,
which
sir.
came out yesterday.
Uh,
So I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you for so much for calling me.
Thanks, sir. But tell me, like many of us who were following the war,
Hmm.
it's been a year of war now. Did you actually anticipate it's going to go on so long? And you can you trace the cause of the conflict in a nutshell?
Ajay, to be absolutely truthful, I didn't think it would last more than a week.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, the Russians had done everything right in the beginning. Everything.
Right.
They had planned for this war in 2021. If you remember, there was a major exercise
Yes.
held prior to this war a year ago, a year before the war started.
Yes.
Uh, it was a major exercise which was followed by by a NATO exercise in the same place.
Yes. A steadfast defender, if I remember right.
Steadfast defender, absolutely.
Yes.
And the second issue was that they had, they when they were moving the troops backward, they had left their major pieces of equipment in the areas south of Ukraine, close to the border. So they're not
Right.
taking it backward.
Right.
The second thing was that they'd moved a lot of troops, I think almost 100,000 troops to Belarus
Correct.
to sort of plan or at least push the Ukrainians to think that there would be a major offensive from
From the
Belarus
north.
towards Kiev, because the distance from Belarus to Kiev is just about 70 odd kilometers,
Correct. Correct.
unlike the 360, 400 odd kilometers that they would have to traverse if they moved from the
Yes.
south. So they had these large pincers, Ajay. And as you said, I was a strike corps commander. Uh,
Yes.
this was something that I was looking at, trying to read, trying to find out as to how uh, they would they would plan to do this. As the GOC strike one, I had carried out a major exercise with the Russian military, uh, with two of my divisions and the armored,
Right. Uh-huh.
and they seemed so professional. They came with their equipment. They seemed so professional. They knew it all. Their soldiers were well trained, and I
Oh,
was under the impression that they had sorted out everything. Because if there are two things clear about the Soviets or the Russians now, is
right.
their ability to use armor,
Yes. I
and
mean,
the
they
second is,
started the theories of deep thrust after all.
absolutely, yes,
Uh,
the armor and combined arms. It was a unlike us who are still experimenting with combined arms. Russians had sort of specialized in the use of combined arms, and the second was the use of air. They've got the
right.
world's best aircraft, whatever anyone might say. Their aircraft are the world's best. So with
Yes.
these two huge advantages, why did they fail?
Now,
So that's
yes.
something that it would be worth discussing.
Something, sir. You mentioned very as a Striker commander when you saw those pincers. I mean, for me, as a military man, looking at the map, and I saw those four large pincers, I think it brought out one drawback in the Russian plan. They addressed it too widely. Even the threats from Kiev, they addressed a frontage of 2,500 kilometers. Maybe their thrust lines were not complementary. Also, perhaps do you feel like, I think from what was emerged, they had no central commander who was commanding all those four thrusts. They were all moving independent. So, do you think the lack of cohesion, that the lack of coordination played a role in the fact that they dissipated all the thrusts and none of them could make headway?
You know, part of my study as a young officer was the study of the Eastern War by the Nazis, the Second
Right?
World War, and their
Yes.
thrust towards Moscow, Stalingrad, Leningrad,
Kiev,
and
Kiev and
Kiev.
Kharkiv, the major
And
battles which are fighting
yes, yes,
today.
yes.
Uh,
And I had done this study for staff college while studying for my staff college examination, and that was still fresh in me.
yes,
And 2 years ago, in 2019, my wife and me had visited Russia,
right.
and we had one of the most important things in my mind was actually to go and see the battlefields.
Okay.
You know how Moscow was surrounded,
Right.
how
Okay.
St. Petersburg and now then
Leningrad.
Leningrad and now
Yes,
St. Petersburg was surrounded, and the idea of how space can be traded, because space is such an
correct.
important part when you're using
Right.
armor.
Yes.
And I thought they were trying to do what the Germans had done. This
Right.
huge complementary, I mean, those huge
See,
thrusts, which were, I couldn't say complementary because they were so far from each other.
far away from each other. True.
With Paulus, one once Rheinstein, Paulus commanding each separate thrust, and they had
Yes.
made their way almost till Moscow,
The Moscow. True.
right? So
Uh,
maybe they were emulating that part.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
so the amazing thing is that if they were emulating that part, why didn't they succeed?
Yes. Well, I
Uh,
think perhaps
yeah,
one of the reasons is maybe they underestimated Ukrainian resistance. I think all of us did. We didn't anticipate they would fight such a determined and such a skillful battle, if I could call it that.
I think Ajay, more than Ukrainian, uh, you know, resistance would be the fact that they didn't use air power,
I'm with you, sir. Totally.
and if they didn't use air power in conjunction with their armor as it was moving, that was the
Yes.
first issue which I feel sort of reduced their ability to go near Kyiv. The
Correct, sir.
second thing was the timing of the launch of the
Absolutely.
campaign.
Absolutely.
We
Spring
are
forward.
all aware, Ajay, that Marshall Winter and Marshall Mud
Yes.
are such huge factors in Russia. It defeated Napoleon, and you can still see those. If you go to Russia and you go to
Huh.
some of those huge museums there, you see the effect of Marshall Winter on Napoleon's army and
Oh,
on the
okay. Russians.
retreating German armies, and
Yes.
how the Russians had kept their reserves to the last moment before they launched them, the reserve
Correct.
Siberian reserves of almost
Siberian
20
divisions.
divisions.
Yes,
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 the
yes.
Siberian division. So all that was in my mind when I was looking at this. That I said they have all these lessons in them.
But why
They
did
have
they
the
follow it?
terrain with them.
Huh.
Why would they not, or why would they do what they did, knowing what goes wrong?
You
If
know,
you
sir,
confine the armor to the roads, where is the ability
there is
of the
no
armor
use of
to maneuver?
armor. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But sir, what comes to my mind is like you said, the timing. It is so
Absolutely.
glaringly apparent. It reminds
Absolutely.
me of when General Manekshaw was told by Mrs. Gandhi in April. I remember the date, 28th
Absolutely.
of April,
Yes.
1971. General, I want you to go into East Pakistan now, and he refused. He said the weather
Absolutely.
is not right. I can only move in November, and she
Absolutely.
listened.
She listened.
Maybe Putin's generals did not have that professional integrity to stand up to a strong commander, which could have contributed to the scale of,
I
I would say,
agree
stalemate.
entirely.
I won't call it disaster, I'll
I
call it a
agree
stalemate.
entirely. But probably
Yes.
Putin was waiting for
Olympic Games?
the Olympics, the Winter Olympics to
Correct.
finish.
Correct.
He was waiting to discuss this with
his
with
friend
Xi,
Xi
yeah,
Jinping.
with Xi Jinping, and maybe that was a reason. But as you said, military commanders who do not have the integrity to tell their, tell their civilian masters that look, this is the
Yes,
problem, and we can't go further than this, or we can't
yes,
do it at this time, because
huh,
the Russians more than anyone know the crippling effects of winter
of
and
course,
mud on the use
of
of
course,
armor. It's
yes,
crippling.
huh,
And to then confine the armor and to prevent it from maneuvering with giving it the space was
yes.
that the armor was actually they were sitting ducks.
And they were funneled into cities because they had to clear the
Absolutely,
cities. It was,
absolutely, which is
yes.
absolutely wrong. If you hear what I spoke in March last year, I said the Russians will never enter the cities because
But they
that's
did.
what they did. Yeah,
But
but
they did,
because the Russian generals who operated with me or exercised with me
right?
spoke so clearly about the fact that they would never enter cities.
Oh,
And as the strike corps commander, I know that all our plans have nothing to do with cities. It is to use the space to maneuver or
absolutely.
to isolate cities, but
Huh.
not to enter them. You don't enter cities with armor. And cities are time bombs. They can fight
Course,
interminably,
yes.
you know?
And the Russians had the lessons of Stalingrad. All they could
Absolutely.
learn from what the
Moscow,
Germans
the
did.
defenses of Moscow,
Moscow.
Stalingrad. Absolutely, absolutely. It's for a professional military professional officer to
Yes,
see the degradation in the thought processes is
it's
really
baffling.
disturbing.
It's baffling.
Yeah, yeah, it's really
But
that.
then, sir, if you take a look at it, I mean, yes, I do agree the thrusts were wrong. But then now, over that year of war, eventually the Russians went back to not armor or mechanized tactics, but steady traditional tactics. And if one looks at it about October, contrary to what the Western media says, their gains have been quite a bit. They have taken over 20% of Ukraine's eastern territories, their most profitable territories. And today, I actually feel they're not too badly off. Neither in the east nor in the south. What do
See,
you feel is the state
yeah, yeah,
right now?
I agree, Ajay. There are three things that stand out clearly
Uh
before the
huh.
war, before he launched, and now.
Uh huh.
Is when you ask yourself three questions. If
Right.
Russia was to capture Ukraine,
Right.
can it hold on to it?
That's
That's
the
the
crux.
that's the first crux. And the answer is so clear, it can't, right?
True.
It
True.
can't hold on if the population is not with him.
Absolutely.
So that's the first issue. If it can't hold on, then what would be his plan? A regime change?
That's what he intended, I suppose. A
For a
friendly regime.
regime change, did
Uh,
you need to come to Kiev?
with you, sir. Totally.
So that's the second issue.
Uh,
And the third issue is what we all learn. I mean, the first thing you learn when you're, studying for your, when you plan to do an appreciation of the task you've been giving, is how much can I plan now? How
correct.
far can I plan?
How far ahead?
Yes.
Yes.
And have they just lost it that they didn't plan for all these issues?
Sir, I think
So
so.
that's
They
the
planned, yes, for a
these
month
were the
long war
three
almost.
issues. Yes, these were the
Yes.
three issues. Initially when they moved that 60-kilometer column, which was say
Supposedly
20
halted.
kilometers from
Yes.
20 kilometers from Kiev,
Huh.
I thought to myself that that was a ruse, a feint,
Okay. Okay.
while the Russians carried out operations in the east and they were succeeding wildly. Then after a
Yes.
while, that 60-kilometer column dissipated.
Correct.
So maybe Ajay, which we've not been talking to the Russians,
Huh.
maybe
Huh.
they meant it as a ruse
Yes, but the thing is, sir, if
because
they
it
also had an attack towards to capture Hostomel airfield and had that
correct,
airborne attack
which failed,
which failed, it would have
which
been
failed.
one of the most brilliant and the most audacious operations, not only of this war, but of all wars. I
Yes,
mean, we would have been, the story of the war would have been different.
absolutely.
Well, yes, sir, but I agree with you. Maybe, I mean, I felt when it halted, maybe not a ruse, But maybe the time frame kind of went awry, and they realized very sensibly that now you can't enter the city. Let us go back. Before you enter what they would call a Zelensky grad, it would become a Zelensky grad for them
Yeah,
thereafter.
yeah.
Yes, sir. But now, sir, now that martial winter has come about, and I would say, we are like we see the front end has kind of stabilized on the east and in the south. Where do you see the war going now, sir?
Ajay, martial winter's ending, but
Correct.
martial mud is still there,
True.
right?
True.
So anything that's going to happen, and I've
Right.
said this on record, will happen in spring.
Right.
Once the mud finishes off, dries up,
Right.
and the space for maneuver is available,
Right.
only then can and only then should the Russians do anything as far as an offensive is concerned. That's the
Right.
that would be my first advice to them.
So you say you are anticipating a Russian spring offensive. I mean, the signs are there. The preparation is
Ab-
there.
But nothing before April, May.
Right. Right.
The second thing is there are two parts of the geography of Ukraine that we need to keep in mind.
Okay.
One is the eastern part,
Right.
east of the Dnieper River,
Correct.
and one is the western part. If you take your mind back to pre the Second World War, pre the bringing up of Ukraine, Ukraine was divided with Poland having the western part
Uh huh.
and the Russians having the eastern part.
Right.
Am I right?
Yes.
So if the Russians are to do anything,
Hmm.
they will not cross the Dnieper River.
No, that would be their line. Yes, I agree with you totally. I don't think they have
Absolutely.
resources to sustain beyond that line in any case.
Absolutely. So if they are to not cross the Dnieper River, and they are to look at the populations that are there in the eastern side of Ukraine that might support them.
Right.
If you were to do a population study of the Russian-speaking people east of Ukraine, that could be now their new aims.
Okay. So the provinces they've already taken over so far, they are the largely Russian-speaking provinces. Kherson,
Absolutely,
Zaporizhia,
absolutely,
Luhansk, Donetsk.
yeah. Uh, Maximum they would destroy territory up till the Dnieper River
Right. Okay.
and build their defenses and consolidate around that. That
Right.
would be a professional general's thought process if they were to tell Putin that this is the
Okay.
way we must go through this.
Absolutely. Okay. But then, sir, what
And the
about the
one more issue, Ajay,
sir?
is what would these Ukrainians want to do?
Correct.
I feel the Western media or I mean after reading Western media and the thoughts of many Western generals, they want the Ukraine army to
Uh huh.
push towards Crimea,
Right.
to take the Crimean Peninsula
Actually, back again. Okay.
back again, which would be a great blow to the Russians.
And I don't think Russians would ever accept it.
Absolutely. So these are the two things. Neither can Russia win completely,
Right.
neither can the Ukrainians defend completely.
So I agree with you totally. I mean, in fact, quoting on the lines, Russia is too strong to fail, but not
Absolutely.
strong enough to win. And the same with
Absolutely. That's such
Ukraine.
a correct phrase.
Yes,
That's so correct.
it is too strong to lose, but not strong enough to win. So we
Absolutely.
are seeing a state of stalemates. And how I'm visualizing it is you spoke about both the Ukrainian and the Russian counteroffensive. I'm seeing like we spoke of the Second World War. It's the same today in Kharkiv, Kiev was the so great battle of the Second World
Yes.
War.
Yes.
We are
Yes.
seeing a stage of how it went in 4 years. A offensive, a counteroffensive, and long periods of defensive stalemate.
Absolutely.
Maybe this is the trend of the Ukrainian war in 2023.
I feel similarly.
Am I, sir?
I feel similarly.
Right,
That
right.
Russia can't fail, but
Yes,
if you don't
it
give
can't
Putin what he
survive.
wants, there is no way that Russia will withdraw.
Uh,
The NATO is not going to allow Ukraine to give up.
Correct. They will fight to the last Ukrainian.
Ukrainian, absolutely, absolutely. So what you're saying is right. There will be
Yes.
minor offensives, straightening up of lines, but
Correct.
largely large periods of consolidation.
Like we are seeing right now, months of consolidation, preparation, offensive, counteroffensive, like we saw in the.
But yeah, but it's not going to be at the scale of last year.
They're both weak. So both sides are so weak now,
Exactly. So it won't be the scale of last year. There'll be
right?
a general acceptance of
Okay.
what has already happened. And
So
in a while, Europe will be wary of war. They already wary. They will be
get
wary of war.
tired. Yes, sir. But then so there's a school of thought. I mean, I too strongly believe, like, okay, this war is not ending in a conclusion. It won't end with the conclusion. But then how one sees it is, it is stabilizing along that line of contact. They already have an
Correct.
existing
You're absolutely right.
LOC. It is the LOC which is
That
held by the
that
Russian
perception will be there.
and
Yes.
yes, Ukrainian troops. And it'll be like the India-Pakistan LOC. Went 70 years, it went on,
Yeah. It's still
heating
on.
up. And that
Still on.
LOC could well become the line of the LOC between Russia, not in Ukraine, and Europe as well.
Absolutely.
I think so. The
Because
long
after a
term,
while,
yes,
Europe will be wary. Americans
yes.
will continue their noise. Russians won't care,
Maybe till the
and
next presidential election, sir.
and the Russians haven't
Uh-huh.
lost economically.
Yes,
They haven't
they have
lost
sustained it
economically.
very well. Hmm.
The Russian oil is very much
Hmm.
needed.
Hmm.
So I guess it'll
So now
continue.
I'm going to take on one more, very more drug. We've seen this scenario stalemate, which of course we feel are most likelihood. Now, if you take a look at the papers over the past week, suddenly China seems to be making a little bit more noises. They're coming into the fray a little bit more actively. And one of the scenarios which I have brought out in my own book, The Russia Ukraine War, is it escalating into a global war, something on the line of the Second World War, Germany and Japan versus the rest of the world. I know it's a doomsday scenario, but do you envisage a scenario of China coming into play and maybe nuclear weapons also being utilized at a later juncture?
Okay, if that was to happen, let's sort of war game the
Okay,
battlefield.
right, sir?
China entering the war for Ukraine doesn't seem a likely scenario.
No, for Russia, for Russia.
No, but over Ukraine
Correct, correct, correct.
doesn't seem right.
Right,
Will China try out something similar on Taiwan?
absolutely, sir.
And can it get away?
Right,
If it doesn't see the example of Europe being against Russia, then how will the world react with China against over any attempt in Taiwan?
right.
That's the second issue. So geographically, Ajay, China is
Ah,
too far away. Is too far away
right.
to enter any war with Russia over
Okay,
Ukraine. Can it
right.
take advantage of their perceived thought process that the West is involved with Ukraine and we'll do what we want with
In
Taiwan?
Taiwan, right?
You study the
Yes,
Taiwan waters and the Taiwan geography.
right.
Taiwan has no open space.
Okay,
It has only built up areas.
okay.
From the time when it enters the beaches, it crosses that line, enters the beaches. There is no open space for maneuver.
Oh,
So every battle that the Chinese PLA will fight will be fought in the cities.
with a logistical chain separated by the Straits of Taiwan.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I can't think of this being a geographical advantage for China,
Okay, so
frankly.
but let me draw a parallel. Say the Second World War. It was the West versus Germany on one front, largely Russia fighting the battle, but it was USA fighting Japan in the Pacific. So maybe you have a scenario of this of a war ex, straddling both sides of the globe.
True,
That is the worst
but
case scenario which one thinks of.
true, but the objectives of war,
Sir.
professional objectives of war. The reason for the Americans entering the Japanese war or the theater of the Pacific War was the Japanese attacking them in Pearl Harbor.
Correct, sir.
And
Correct.
the reason for Japan to attack them was not to support the Russians or not to support the Germans,
For
but
the economic
to
blockade.
destroy the ability of America to interfere in what they perceived was their growth or their natural growth
Yes.
in the Pacific.
Correct. Correct, sir. Correct.
But in this particular place, there are it geographically when you're fighting a war, Ajay, you have the waters between you, the states between you and Taiwan,
Uh-huh.
which themselves are about 60 kilometers, 70 kilometers
Around
across.
that. Yes.
They don't have a free run. From the moment they start bringing in the troops,
Uh-huh.
with the eyes in the sky, the
They'll
Americans
be
would have
affected.
seen them and then can take them on.
Yes.
How much of America is actually involved with Ukraine is
They're not
actually to
interested.
it's
Yes.
it's it's minimal.
Yes.
There are no troops there. There are maybe professional trainers, not from
Yes.
the serving army.
Yes, sir. Of course.
So the Americans are ready to
Ah,
destroy both birds with a single stone. And
right.
there is nothing inside Taiwan that the PLA can take.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Population is not with them.
But then there's one more thing, sir. If what if the Chinese decide to test the water and what they perceive would be easier along the LAC? Is there a probability of that coming about?
Ajay, as you mentioned about my profile,
Sir, you
I
command
have commanded a brigade on the LAC,
sir,
right, along the eastern Ladakh side,
sir,
from Demchok,
sir,
uh, completely along the right till Hanle, right till the Kailash Mountains.
sir.
Whatever the Chinese have, their achievement is of a particular line.
Okay,
That line is more or less in control.
okay.
Uh, there is no further reason for them to fight a war.
Hmm.
Secondly, there is no advantage now. There is no
Right,
objective and there is no advantage.
right.
So when there are three issues when you go to a war: is one is your objective, secondly what do you want to gain politically or militarily, and the third is what is the kind of destruction or the surprise that you may be able to achieve.
Attain, right.
Nowhere in eastern Ladakh
Can they
or
attain it?
northeast India can does China have the element of surprise anymore. Secondly,
Okay.
the troops that we have committed both in eastern Ladakh and in the northeast along the Arunachal border are in position for the last 2 years.
Yes, sir.
There is no way that there is any large operational objective available to them.
That's
And India
encouraging.
has exercised what I would call strategic restraint.
Right.
We've kept our powder dry. We've got dominant objectives on the ground, which we have kept to ourselves, where we've deployed our troops,
Uh-huh.
and we are slowly gaining in strength.
True. Our infrastructure
So,
is
yeah,
developing
so
so fast
neither
now.
the advantage of terrain is available, neither the advantage of objectives are available, neither the advantage of
Cost
space are
ratios.
available.
Wonderful,
So
sir.
I don't think anything that China can do
Yes,
here,
sir. I don't think
and nor
anybody
can it
else
do
will
anything else.
put it across so convincingly. Thank you. But now that the war, we've traveled a lot of distance of the war from Ukraine to Taiwan and coming closer to Indian shores. Well, what do you think, sir? I mean, well, as we started about it was a year of war. What do you feel are do you think there's any possibility of a negotiated peace coming about? Any settlement, maybe even an armistice or a ceasefire coming about?
Ajay, Post the 6 weeks of the last war, there was a chance that the Ukrainians would have agreed.
Right.
When Putin said, I want a guarantee that Ukraine will not be a part of NATO,
Right.
and I want a written guarantee,
Written guarantees. Yes.
which the Americans didn't give him. 6 weeks later, he again said the same thing.
Hmm.
But this time he added Zelensky not being there
Yes.
to his list of demands, which once again, to stop a larger war, would have been acceptable to the Ukrainians.
Uh-huh.
Now, 1 year into the war, with Zelensky recently having gone to the
UNGA
gone
and USA. Yes.
UNGA, I don't see Zelensky giving up unless he's removed by his forces, who
Is they
then
will
say
not
that look,
become too popular figure. Now he's become a symbol of
more
Ukraine,
than
you know.
that, it's an impossible war to win.
Yes.
Do you want to destroy more?
Mm.
And you will anyway not be a part of NATO, no matter
Right.
what you say. So let's stop now.
Hmm.
That could happen if the Ukrainian armed forces or someone strong in Ukraine comes up and removes
Right.
them. Or the other issue that
Right.
Putin is removed by one of
Putin,
his commands.
yes.
So these are the two issues. I don't see them agreeing otherwise.
True, sir. But you know, like if you take both sides are making the right noises, like Zelensky is talking about his 10 plan peace formula, and Putin says open to negotiation. As you know, earlier they didn't want to
Absolutely.
talk also. So the way perhaps India can play a role in at least getting them together on the same table and sit down. Like after all, as Churchill famously said, "Na to yo-yo is better than to war." So maybe even if they are not going to be, if they are sitting there and talking about talking, it's a good sign. And if they do come to the table, both sides know the war is unwinnable. Reach some kind of even armistice, as is there in North and South Korea. I think it might help bring the war to some kind of a conclusion.
I agree.
That's,
I agree, Ajay. That
yeah,
can happen.
yeah.
Uh, we what we've done in our foreign policy is that
So,
we have not taken a side.
yes.
Because we've not taken a side, I recently, in fact, had gone for the Asia Economic Dialogue, where
So,
our foreign minister had also come. So there was a question, I think, by the Brazilian ambassador,
uh-huh.
which talked of India not taking sides. And we're very clear that we don't, it is not in our advantage to take sides. So because we've not taken sides and because we've not been widely condemned by the Americans over it, the Russians, of course, have welcomed everything. Uh, I feel that we will be in a stronger position to request both sides for war, to
Yes,
terminate the war.
we can play
Yeah, yeah.
the broker.
But for that, some parts of what, uh, especially Russia, is looking for, have to succeed before Putin agrees.
Hmm. Okay. So
So maybe,
potentially some kind of a
yeah,
face-saving exit, you mean?
maybe something for saving would have to be there
Right, right,
for
right,
for
right.
him to say that, look, I didn't take you along this war uselessly, because his
Ah,
own position will become very tenuous,
weaker. Correct.
right?
And
Uh,
Zelensky
yeah,
and Zelensky
Zelensky
was what him.
is just a pawn here. He's a pawn of the West.
I agree
And if
on
the
that, sir.
West decides that we've had enough and we stop this thing, or some greater problem comes up, then
Ah,
Zelensky will immediately lose relevance.
you're right, sir.
So this is what I feel could happen.
Yes, but like you point out, I think India is ideally positioned to play the role
We're
of the
ideally
honest
positioned.
broker. And if we do it, even a ceasefire, if nothing else, if till the while
It'll
the
be
dialogue
it'll be
continues,
huge for our diplomacy.
be tremendous for our state. It'll be tremendous for the world as such.
Yes, yes, yes.
But anyways, I think it's been a super discussion with you, and
Thank
we've
you, Ajay.
really meandered across so many
I
different
know. Yes, yes.
arenas and theaters of war.
Absolutely.
And it's been such
Absolutely.
a pleasure. And I really hope to have more discussions with you. And let's hope the next one we have is not to commemorate another year of war, but maybe to celebrate the beginning of
By
peace.
all means, by all means. Yes, I look forward
Thank
to
you
that,
so
Ajay.
much. It's been a huge pleasure speaking to you.
Similarly, likewise. Thank you.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Bye.